Love in horror movies doesn't work the way it's supposed to. It's intense, unpredictable, and rarely ends well. These are love stories where desire spirals out of control, and where grief or obsession can take on something unnatural. Some are quiet and haunting, others are violent and strange. But all of them show what happens when horror and romance collide, and neither one lets go. Possession opens with a spy named Mark returning home to West Berlin, only to find his wife, Anna, wants a sudden and unexplained divorce. But her reasons don't add up, and neither does anything that follows. There's a second apartment, a string of violent deaths, and something inhuman growing behind closed doors. Isabelle Adjani is unforgettable, shifting between despair, mania, and something that feels truly unearthly. There's a double of her, then a double of him. And by the time it's over, the story has unraveled into a chaotic fever dream about identity, obsession, and emotional collapse. The Hunger is sleek, cold-blooded, and drenched in atmosphere. It's director Tony Scott's first feature, and right out of the gate, he made something that feels more like a music video for death. All shadowy apartments, slow motion, and dripping blood. Catherine Deneuve plays Miriam, an elegant vampire who's lived for centuries by seducing lovers with the promise of eternal youth. But when her latest partner, played by David Bowie, starts aging rapidly after 200 years at her side, things unravel fast. Susan Sarandon enters the picture as a doctor pulled into Miriam's orbit, and what follows is a love triangle where the stakes are literally eternal. This isn't a film about jump scares. It's about style, seduction, and what happens when forever turns into a trap. The Fly is part love story, part science experiment gone way off the rails. Jeff Goldblum plays Seth Brundle, a brilliant but reclusive scientist working on teleportation who falls for journalist Veronica Quaife, played by Gina Davis. Their chemistry clicks immediately, both professionally and romantically. But after a misunderstanding, Seth impulsively tests the machine on himself, not realizing a housefly has slipped into the pod with him. At first he feels stronger, faster, more alive. But soon his body begins to change. Teeth fall out, skin peels. The man Veronica fell for is vanishing, replaced by something grotesque and insectoid. As Seth deteriorates into a creature he can barely recognize, the real horror isn't just physical. It's watching a romance dissolve under the weight of mutation, obsession, and a love neither of them can save. Released in 1982, Cat People is a slow-burn erotic horror movie with a dreamlike pulse and a very specific warning. Don't sleep with the wrong person, especially if they might turn into a panther. Nastassja Kinski stars as Irina, a quiet young woman who moves to New Orleans to reconnect with her estranged brother, played by Malcolm McDowell. But their reunion takes a dark turn, revealing a family secret that ties sex to transformation and desire to death. Directed by Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver and Raging Bull among others, the movie mixes blood, mythology, and high-gloss style, backed by Giorgio Moroder's synth-heavy score and one of David Bowie's best deep cuts. It's moody, strange, and just keeps getting weirder. The Vampire Lovers, released in 1970, pushed famed Hammer films into more provocative territory, mixing gothic horror with open sexuality in a way that hadn't really hit British theaters before. Set in 18th century Austria, where a string of young women begin wasting away from a mysterious illness, always after befriending the same enigmatic girl. She appears under different names, but her pattern doesn't change. Gain their trust, seduce them, and drain their blood. Ingrid Pitt plays the vampire at the center of it all, preying on lonely daughters while their guardians remain oblivious. As more bodies pile up, a retired vampire hunter starts to connect the dots, tracing the killings back to the Karnstein family and a centuries-old curse. It's part murder mystery, part seduction, with a heavy dose of supernatural folklore. Don't Look Now is one of the most quietly devastating horror movies ever made. Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie play a married couple still reeling from the accidental death of their young daughter. They head to Venice, hoping a change of scenery will help, but the city turns out to be just as haunted as them. There's a blind psychic, strange warnings of danger, and glimpses of a small figure in a red coat, the same one their daughter wore when she died. The film moves like memory, fragmented, elusive, full of things left unsaid. Venice becomes a maze of dead ends and ghostly reflections, a story about how the past refuses to stay buried, and how love can turn into a trap when you can't let go. Bride of Frankenstein is a sequel to 1931's Frankenstein, and it's one of the most beautifully strange horror movies ever made. Boris Karloff returns as the monster, badly burned but alive, wandering the countryside in search of connection. After a brief moment of peace with a blind hermit who shows him kindness, he's pulled back into a world that fears him. Meanwhile, Henry Frankenstein is pressured into continuing his experiments by the unhinged Dr. Pretorius, who insists the monster deserves a mate. The bride is brought to life during a lightning storm, regal, electrified, and terrified. What follows isn't happily ever after, but it's unforgettable in its own weird way. Daughters of Darkness is icy, erotic, and quietly vicious. Newlyweds Stefan and Valerie check into a grand, mostly empty seaside hotel in Belgium. It's the kind of place where time feels suspended. Then the Countess Bathory arrives in a blood-red car with her silent companion Ilona in tow. She claims to be a descendant of the infamous Hungarian killer, and she sets her sights on the young couple almost immediately. What follows isn't a seduction so much as a slow takeover, mental, emotional, and eventually physical. Murders pile up, secrets unravel, and loyalty shifts. And by the time the sun comes up, the roles of predator and prey aren't so easy to pin down. Kuroneko is a ghost story told like a fever dream, all shadows, silence, and floating fabric. Deep in a bamboo forest, two women are brutally murdered by samurai. Soon after, soldiers begin disappearing near a ruined estate, lured by the promise of comfort, then killed with eerie precision. The women have returned as vengeful spirits, gliding through fog in elegant robes, tearing out throats like cats. When a newly minted samurai is sent to investigate, he realizes the spirits are his own mother and wife, trapped by a bargain made in the afterlife. What follows is part haunting, part love story, a tale about war, loss, and the impossible task of staying loyal to the dead without losing yourself. Bram Stoker's Dracula is operatic, over-the-top, and one of the most visually extravagant horror films of the 90s. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola, it's less a straight adaptation and more a fever dream remix of gothic romance, bloodlust, and doomed devotion. Gary Oldman plays the Count like a man trapped between centuries, sorrowful, seductive, and monstrous all at once. Winona Ryder is Mina, caught between reincarnated love and a very real danger. Anthony Hopkins brings sharp-edged energy to Van Helsing, while Keanu Reeves plays Jonathan Harker, the unwitting solicitor who sets the story in motion. As Dracula crosses continents to reclaim what he believes he's lost, the film becomes a collision of lust, grief, and vengeance, where love might save your soul or damn it forever.